Welcome to another episode of A Breath of Fresh Jacob, where we have another not question.
Ah, boy, here we go.
I'm starting to think you guys are doing this on purpose. Today's not question comes from KuroKuro874 and asks, games that uses a name to sell. Okay, so ignoring the grammar disaster there, games that use a franchise's name to sell itself. Ooh. Yeah, there's a few there that I could definitely talk about for the rest of time. Let's start with the obvious ones, right? So Final Fantasy 13. Final Fantasy 13 is a terrible Final Fantasy game. However, it's not a bad game in its own right. I think that it's one of those games that, much like the other ones we're going to discuss today, it would have done a lot better if it didn't have that name tied to it. They made this game that definitely wasn't a Final Fantasy game, had a different combat system, different feel to it completely, and they were just like, hey, what if we put the Final Fantasy name on it? And so they did, which increased expectations of the game wildly. And unfortunately, it fell flat. And then they made a sequel, and it fell flat. And then they made another sequel, and it kind of fell flat too. So it's like,
how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
Stop. You're trying to be all like grand with this. Just stop. Final Fantasy 13 would have sold better and would have been critically received better if it wasn't called Final Fantasy 13. I don't know, call it Legend of the 13 Crystals or something. Not that there's 13 crystals in that game. I was just trying to keep with the 13 theme. Look, this game makes me upset and happy at the same time. It was the first one I got on my Xbox 360. I even got that like cool like lightning faceplate for my Xbox 360, and then was completely useless when they came out with the Slims where you couldn't put faceplates on them. And anyway, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts would have been a significantly better game if it wasn't called Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. They could have called it anything else. They could have just called it Adventures of the Bird Nuts and Bolts, and it would have sold so much better, because what they did is they advertised at first like a Banjo-Kazooie game, and then they stuck Banjo and Kazooie's name on it, and then they gave us a car building racing adventure game. That is not a Banjo-Kazooie game. It's not what we were waiting a million years for. I'm still mad about this.
Take it easy, it's just a...
Games, in and of itself, while not a great game, had parts of it that were at least interesting. Building the cars was kind of fun, and driving them around like the little hub areas, and like putting like the little sticky ball on the back to like drag stuff around and flying around with like the collapsible propellers and the collapsible wings and the balloons, and there was a lot of stuff in that game that was really interesting. But it wasn't a Banjo-Kazooie game. It was nothing like a Banjo-Kazooie game, and it was heartbreaking. And so they kind of fucked the game over really hard by calling it Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. Even just Nuts and Bolts would have been better, and kept Banjo and Kazooie out of it. Maybe had them as like a cameo appearance or something. Pre-order the game and you can play as Banjo and Kazooie, and it'd just be like a cosmetic thing instead of actually making the game around them badly. But anyway, I could talk about that game for way too long. What else? Star Fox Adventures. It was supposed to be called like Dinosaur Planet or something. And then they were just like, but what if we stuck Star Fox in this to help it sell? Here's the thing, right? A lot of people like Star Fox Adventures. I'm not one of those people. I thought the game was at best. But again, it was another one of those games where it definitely felt like, this isn't a Star Fox game. This is not even close to a Star Fox game. Why is Star Fox here? Why is any of this stuff here? And in my opinion, the game suffered for it. Yeah, maybe it sold a little bit better because it had Star Fox in it rather than this new IP. But I feel like the game could have stood on its own a lot better if it had more unique characters. Except for that little dinosaur that never shuts the fuck up. Leave me the hell alone. I don't care. Go away. At least it has a great shopkeeper. It's an iconic shopkeeper. Also, he's an asshole. That's not the point. What else? What other games were like nothing like what came before, and it was clear that they just slapped a name on it to sell? Hey, look, Breath of the Wild. Anyway, I'm not going to go into details about Breath of the Wild. We'll be here all day, but Breath of the Wild does not feel like a Zelda game because it does not feel like it was designed like a Zelda game. It is not a bad game. Honestly, it's gorgeous. It runs well on the Switch. It's got this giant open world. Admittedly, there's not much in it, and the dungeons are kind of poopy. Anyway, it's not a good Zelda game. I'm sorry. It's not a good Zelda game. It's a good game. It's not a good Zelda game, but people love it because it's got Zelda's name in it. That's a prime fucking example of that. Talk about that game too much. I'm gonna not. Ukulele. Okay, now that was a Kickstarter game. That was very heavily marketed to be like, ooh, look, it's Banjo-Kazooie. I didn't like Ukulele. No, I will start by saying the music in that game is fantastic, because of course it is, and you all know why. But Ukulele has one fundamental issue, and it is something that I feel like I'm going to talk about on this channel at some point at length. I adore Banjo-Kazooie. It is one of my top 10 favorite games of all time. The music in that game will always make me happy. I could be in like the worst mood possible. I listen to one of those songs and I immediately feel better. It is like my comfort food of music. It's a phenomenal game. I don't like Banjo-Tooie, and I have a lot of reasons, and we'll get into that some other day, I'm sure, but I don't like Banjo-Tooie. Still has amazing music, but the game to me is... But Ukulele acted like it was going to be a Banjo-Kazooie game, but it was a Banjo-Tooie game. And that was what I had a problem with. It did the same shit that Banjo-Tooie did, where you would get to the end of a puzzle and it would be like, so do you have that move from 3 levels from now? No? Guess you're redoing this puzzle when you come back, lol. Hate that. I hate that shit. It's designed to waste your time and it pisses me off. Anyway, ukulele. Okay, moving on. Ooh. So this is a really good example of not just the name of like a previous game or a movie, but of someone. Elden Ring. Elden Ring was touted as like this giant, explosively amazing game because it was written by George R.R. Martin. Okay, I have a lot of friends that have played Elden Ring, and I've played some Elden Ring myself, okay? And this is not going to be a video on Elden Ring because I have a lot of thoughts on that, and I'm not going to go into that today. However, Elden Ring can eat my ass. So Elden Ring's biggest problem is that it's Dark Souls 4. It follows the natural progression of games. It has the tweaked stuff that makes it a better experience. It is Dark Souls 4 in literally every sense of the word. I don't know how clear I could be about that. I promise you it is Dark Souls 4. But instead of calling it Dark Souls 4, they called it something else and slapped George R.R. Martin's name on it. It doesn't feel like George R.R. Martin did anything with it, okay? The plot is like Dark Souls. The characters are like Dark Souls. The writing is like Dark Souls. George R.R. Martin didn't do anything with the other Dark Souls games. His name is there completely superfluously. Is that even a word? But you know what I mean if it's not a word, okay? And if they just called it Dark Souls 4, I wouldn't be so pissed about it. Because the game itself is really good. It's really well designed. It's got some really cool stuff. You got the horsey that you can ride, which is really cool. The big open world stuff, in my opinion, is done pretty well. Taking a game that isn't inherently open world in that sense, where it's like you got sections that you go through, it feels like an open world because it's all interconnected like Dark Souls 1. It's not open world, but it feels open. Dark Souls 1 did a really good job with that. 2, 3, but 1 did it really well. This game is proper open world. You can go anywhere the fuck you want, even if it's the wrong time to go there, and it's really interesting. The game has a lot of padding, but that's a conversation for another day. Elden Ring is a really good game, but why is it called Elden Ring and not called Dark Souls 4? Why? Because they wanted to slap George R.R. Martin's name in there so they could coattail off of Game of Thrones, and it pisses me off.
Just take it all in for a moment. Let it soak in.
Something else and slap George R.R. Martin. Okay, I think that's enough for today. If you can think of any games, or if you have any pet peeves about games that were sold with a name just to make it seem better than it was, put it down in the comments, because I want to hear about them. Because if there's any that I haven't, like maybe I played and I didn't realize that it was supposed to be something else, that could blow my mind, and I love having my mind blown. So put those down in the comments. I'd love to read through them, and thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys back here for the next episode, whenever the hell it comes out. Okay, bye-bye.